Welcome back to Channel Water. Today we're going to talk about the question, do we live inside of a simulation? Why do we even think that that's a possibility? Why do we question if life is real or not? And what does it mean for us? So today in this video I will answer that question. There's two answers to it. There is a yes and there is a no. And I will explain why. First, we have to talk about our bodies. I made a video that talks about what shapes our personality. So it's basically a video that explains the difference between our being beyond this body and the relationship to this body. Each one of us has a vehicle that we operate inside of, and all of our bodies are very different. So we receive different types of input, we have a different relationship with reality, we experience it in a different way. Just from the physicality, the differences between our bodies, not even talking about our actual experiences, mentally and emotionally. So our identity beyond the body is just one of pure consciousness. It's something that we all share, but once we enter this body, we are inside of this capsule, this vehicle, and we operate inside of it, and we have a limited perception of our reality, and those limitations come from our bodies. So we have three elements that are playing here. We have the self, which I use water as a symbol. In this material world, in what we know, water is the symbol to that soul, to that ocean of consciousness. There's the body, which is your vehicle that you operate through. And there's the environment, which is the world of matter that we know. The planets, the elements, the building blocks that we use to build the architecture of life around us. So in that equation, our body is the vehicle that is between you, the self, which is not matter, and the building blocks around you, which is the actual environment we operate inside of. So there's something between the two. And our bodies is that something that is between the two, receiving the data, then we translate that data, and we have our experiences, what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we feel, but we never feel it directly. So us, as pure consciousness, never feels that exterior world directly. We always feel it through this vehicle. So this gets us to where I started with our personality, our bodies, and our different experiences. So our vehicles send us information, input that we receive from the environment. Different bodies have different sensors. We have different experiences. And the fact that we have different experiences is the beginning of us questioning the reality around us. So the differences between our bodies, between our inputs, between our experiences is the beginning of questioning whether the reality around us is real. Is it solid? Are we all experiencing the same world? And then sometimes when there's differences between those experiences, we feel like there's a glitch, right? And we start feeling like, wait, maybe this world is not what I think it is. Maybe it's not as real as I think it is. And that's really the beginning of how we start questioning if our reality is real and if there's something else that operates that reality around us. And it's very interesting to notice that we strive to have a certain stability, and we want there to be oneness of experience, of reality. We want reality to be absolute, the same all the time, in order to feel safe about it, in order to feel that there is a stable place that we are in. Which is very interesting because in the way of personality and experience, we strive to have the opposite. We strive to have diversity and freedom to have your experience, your truth, even as we say it today. So it's really interesting to see how, on one hand, we want the material world, the reality around us, to be one, And we want our spirit to be infinite in that way, in its differences. And that reflects also the reality of matter. Matter is one of the same, while consciousness is everything that possibly could be. So the way we experience life is through our sensors receiving data, and that data, the source, could change. And it could come from a different source, any source for that matter. And that means that there is the possibility that your senses could be hijacked and you could receive data from a different source, an artificial source. In a way, our sensors right now, our body is a technology, is artificial, right? It's a type of technology that is made, designed to receive that data, for you to be able to operate in this world. In that way, our reality as it is now is not real. It is just a form of information. Nothing that we experience is more than information we receive. That information we receive can come from anywhere for that matter. So that is the part that's really amazing about the idea or the concept of a simulation, is that it is possible. That's the first step we have to understand, that it is absolutely possible that you could be plugged in into a different source of information and you can live inside of a completely different environment, but the signals you're receiving, the information you're receiving, is what you're seeing right now, what you're hearing right now. And that's mind-blowing and something to really think about deeply, about the fact that it's possible. And then now we're going to talk about what does it mean and on what layer of reality and for consciousness it is actually happening or not happening. So once we understand that our senses are artificial, that is a biological technology basically that we are inside of, and that biological technology is between us, the spirit, water, and matter, the environment around us. And the fact that that technology that we have, our biological technology, can change, evolve, can exchange, or could be extended further to include other inputs, other sources. For many people, once that conversation starts and the possibility opens, then sometimes we take a turn towards the most, negative thinking, and we start wondering, like, who is feeding our input? Where is it coming from? Why? Is there a function to it or a purpose to it? Because there must be, if something like this is happening. And the main thing, is it good or bad? So the story of The Matrix, the movie, is a good example of that type of thinking, that our bodies are hijacked for a certain purpose, a function. They're being used, while our mind is being distracted inside of some simulation. So the place we're living in is not the same place that our bodies are in, and that there's something negative to it, that there's somebody is using our bodies in some way, and we're not experiencing full freedom. What's interesting to me is that once we take that step of acknowledging that it is possible, that your body and mind are in two different places, that you're actually starting to understand that you are not your body, that there are two things happening here. And to me, that's where the philosophy of it and really the meaning of it lies, is once we understand that we are not our body, that there's this vehicle here that is between us and our experience, and that body could actually, according, for example, the Matrix or other things, the body could live and survive on its own, away from our mind and our awareness. So, meaning you're not taking care of your body, right? You're not walking around getting water and food and protecting your body. Your body is more like a cell inside of a tree that is just standing there, and there's a flow of nutrition and water and all those things running through it, while your mind is actually in a simulation playing some game. So before I get to the actual answers to what I think about whether we are inside of a simulation or not, I want to talk more about the philosophy of it and what we can draw from it. So let's say that we are inside of a simulation and the reality we know now is not real. Then who are you? Are you real? Or are we also part of that illusion? Part of the program? Is this a program that is self-aware? And if you watched my videos about artificial intelligence and technology, I think the answer is no. I am the one that is experiencing. So I'm the user, I'm the conscious being, and it doesn't matter what vehicle or simulation I'm inside of right now, I am still that one that is experiencing. I'm still the one that is receiving that information, that data, and react to it, which is the definition of being aware and conscious, is to react to your environment and making decisions. The second philosophical point of view I get from this is that if we do live inside of a simulation, that means that there is something real outside of that simulation, right? If there is a simulation, that means there is hardware, matter, a programmer, energy flowing through it, which brings us back to where we are now. Bring us back to a world of matter, energy, programs, illusions, and what we know of from the human story. It's just a question of where we are in that one cycle, but that cycle exists within the same place as we are right now. And that gets us to closer to one of our answers. The human body is the vehicle of the simulation for consciousness, as it is right now. For consciousness, from the point of view of pure consciousness, the human vehicle is part of a simulation. It has its own, the human story that we operate inside of. Water, consciousness, is inside of that story, human story, experiencing that simulation, even though the thing itself that experiencing is pure consciousness. It is not a human being. So you have consciousness inside of this glove, this body, this vehicle, thrown into a world. And that world is basically a full-on simulation. Until you see the world from the point of view of water itself, the way it sees it without this body, you will never see the world as it is. You will always see it through this vehicle, and every animal, plant, person has a completely different set of sensors, vision, hearing. The spectrum is infinite, and we'll never hear, see, or feel the same thing. So for me, the answer to a question, do we live inside of a simulation, is yes and no. It depends on what point of view you use and what identity you have. If we think about life from the point of view of an individual human being, and you think of it as being inside of a simulation like we know today, of putting some virtual reality, augmented reality type technology on you, and that we're operating inside of something else than what you see right now, the answer is no. As a human being right now, you are not in a simulation. this is the world you're inside of. And this is the world that's designed for the human being to be in. So it's like saying I'm inside of one game and I'm playing the character of this game. There is no other game that this character is not seeing right now or playing somewhere else right now as a human being. From our point of view of a human being, the majority of our conversation about the possibility of a simulation is around our understanding of technology and computing ability. It's our understanding of whether or not it's possible to support such an elaborated, complex metrics and simulation for us to live inside of. As we get closer to actually being able to achieve that technologically as humans, we get closer to the feeling that, well, maybe it already happened, or maybe we're inside of it. But what we're ignoring is the fact that that technology has been achieved already. And it is inside of our bodies. Our bodies, our brains, are already that technology that we are striving to achieve or thinking that we will achieve. You are inside of a biological simulation right now, but for water, for consciousness itself. It works in a much smaller scale. The technology in our bodies is incredible. It's beyond understanding as a human being. So if we're asking the question, am I living inside of a simulation? From the point of view of pure consciousness, of water, the answer is yes, absolutely. Life as we know it is created and operated by consciousness, and consciousness is becoming the matter and the playground that it is playing inside of. All the players we know are representatives and avatars of the same one consciousness. The plants, animals, insects, bacteria, us. It is all that consciousness flowing into this world, entering different avatars and playing this game of life, basically. It has its own function and purpose, but we see it from the point of view of human beings. And being self-centered about that, we think of a simulation for human beings, while we miss the point of your identity is beyond that. From the point of view of consciousness, everything around us is information. Consciousness itself is basically, at the beginning, the absolute nothing. And then as it's thinking and has intention, that thought becomes matter, and consciousness materializes itself into the world we're living in and into the avatars and the vehicles we're in, and then playing that game. But then you can see that really everything from matter itself to the information we get, it's all basically a world of information and data, of pure thought turning into something, a thing that now you can touch and feel while you're in this body. And that place is for these bodies in this world. Outside of that, we can't tell until we die how it looks like and what it feels like. But here, now, we are inside of the simulation, talking to each other, listening to each other, touching and holding objects. This is right now the simulation, if you understand that you are something that is beyond this body. When we look at our technologies today in this world, our virtual reality, augmented reality, and the future of simulations that we'll create, we can see how it's just a matter of time until we reach a seamless simulation, a seamless experience that we can be inside of, and to a point where we don't know that we're inside of it, which is the case now for human beings, right? I mean, that's why we have this strange relationship with death and life, because we don't even know life outside of this simulation. We don't even know anything about what happens before and after. While we're in it, that's all we know. For us, at some point, if there is a real function and purpose for it, we can create that. But again, it has to serve a certain function. There has to be a good reason to even have something of that nature. But it is possible. Many people say that because it is possible to achieve that technology, that we probably have achieved it in the past already. And now we are inside of it. I personally don't buy into that argument because, like I said, there has to be a certain function and purpose for a simulation and entering into one. I think that is just an interesting philosophical concept to say that if we can achieve it, we might have achieved it and now we're inside of it. That's fun to think about, but it's not logical. There is no logic in that. Just because it is possible doesn't mean it happened until we find the motive and reason for that to have happened. And more than that, why it would have put us in a simulation that is lesser than where you are. Right? Why are we in a simulation that is not better, more free-flowing, more technologically advanced? Why we will put ourselves in a simulation where we actually witness the entire creation and evolution of technology? Since we have been witnesses to the evolution of technology from before electricity to having electric cars, or before any form of communication to phone lines to Wi-Fi, etc. Since we have been witnesses to that, I don't think that we have already achieved that technology. I think that if we put ourselves into that space, it would be far more advanced and free from the material world we're in now. And you can see that in our video games, for example, in our movies. We strive to be in a place that is much more free-flowing and has abilities that defies the laws of nature, that confine us even further. So, to me, it's hard to believe that if we did create a simulation, this would be it. That's just not logical. So why even talk about this subject? Why does it matter if we are inside of a simulation or not? Are we questioning the meaning of life? Are we questioning the reality of nature, how real it is, of matter? Does it take away from the meaning of your life if you were in a simulation or not? Or does it give you more meaning and purpose if you knew the answer to that question? To me, since I think that we, pure consciousness, are in a simulation of this human story right now, that means to me that life is not random, which means not meaningless. That there is something that is outside and above our existence as human beings, that someone or something made the simulation, and most likely that someone is us. That we are that creator, the programmer that created this game of life that now we are playing inside of. And I can see how a lot of people that have a bit more of a negative pattern of thought or life experience would take that information of being in a simulation to say that we are enslaved, or that there's something else that is bad, that is limiting our perception and limiting our conscious being. But I think it's really up to us to decide how we live with this knowledge, and or lack of knowledge for that matter. We're either can be the victim and paranoid in this story, or we are pure consciousness. We are the ones that are in control, are creating, are making, and improving our condition within this environment. We really see here the yin and yang of existence at the same time. You have one set of data and understanding, and there's two ways of looking at the same thing and two ways of experiencing it. But that doesn't change the fact of this is your experience, this is where you are now inside of this simulation. I personally do believe that there is a function, a reason for this life that we live in, because consciousness as a whole is like one ocean, but then the only separation we experience is when we enter these bodies. So now we're like in these capsules of consciousness, and we experience separation. We experience a certain connection and friction with matter. That is the source of all pain and suffering. And I think we're building something to a place where your body could be liberated from that work, and our bodies could be more like cells inside of a tree where water, pure consciousness, is free-flowing again and fully connected. There is no more the separation of our bodies. And water, it's almost like electricity. Once all of it is touching and connecting, it just all becomes one again. So I could see a future of that. So in a way, we fragment ourselves to all these fractals for a temporary amount of time in order to achieve a certain function. And in the end of that function, we will basically, in a way, exit the simulation, exit this vehicle and work that we're doing now through it. And to me, that stands in line with the idea of singularity. Singularity is having all of consciousness be one again, fully connected. And maybe not just on this planet, but in the universe as a whole. There's lots of water in space that is still waiting to be connected. And once it does, the future of all the things that we call work, or think of it in that way, which means matter, matter moving matter. It won't be any more water moving matter. It will be mind over matter. We'll go back to a place where we scaled up to a world where our thought and intention will be enough to have matter move matter, which means a fully automated world. And in that, freeing water, pure consciousness, from doing the labor, all it will do is the thinking, the imagination, perception, and that will come to life. So we see in that way a certain like evolution of technology within this material world that we built and work inside of. So the goal from the point of view of consciousness, water, is to dissolve ourselves out of this simulation into freedom of movement, of just water moving in water, freedom of movement in space, and freedom from the laws of physics and all the things that basically threaten the freedom of movement of water, like temperature and certain elements that we are, like salt in the ocean, things like that. We're talking about pure, clear water flowing freely in space again, which is something we might have had in the past. And now we're in this cycle to achieve that once again. So to end this video, I just want to go over the positive aspects of what I perceive from the understanding of the simulation we live in. Also how it reflects on some of the most current ideas that we have now about our identity. So the first one, if there is a simulation, there is a design, whether you believe it was happened by a higher entity or ourselves. But the bottom line is life is not random and meaningless. It's actually the opposite of that. The second part is we are not matter. We are not our body. So if you have certain pain and suffering through the body, that is a temporary thing. If you have certain issues of identity, you are not your body. There is something else that is you. And that helps you to identify that and move closer to your true identity and step away from the conflict and what you feel is a contradiction between who you really are and the body that you happen to be in right now. And I see a lot of people waking up to the understanding that they're not their body, and it comes through the ideas of gender, sexuality, and really understanding identity through the separation from our body rather than the separation between ourselves, each one of us, because of our bodies. Next one is that we are the user, we are the programmer, we are the driver. We have more power than you think. We are the ones driving this simulation, and it's up to us to improve it and to always make it better. Next one is that there's no such thing as game over. So understanding the life cycle, life and death, and for those that need that, once you understand what is happening as far as a simulation and your true identity beyond it, you can let go of some of the fears about what happens when it's game over, basically. And the last one is understanding the endless possibilities in the future as we evolve our technologies and basically defies the laws of nature and achieve all of our dreams, basically achieve this freedom of movement, design, imagination, and beyond this planet, out in space and grow infinitely into the universe. So for me, that's a very exciting place to live in and to think about as we are moving forward through this simulation. I hope this video was interesting. I personally enjoy the philosophy of it and understanding through it more about our identity and our relationship to reality, especially our relationship to our own body and what it means. Because a lot of people do suffer and have problem with the conflict that is between who they really are beyond the body and the body that they're in now. And I think maybe the next video I'll make will be about that, gender, sexuality, our personality, and understanding that full spectrum that exists both in your spirit, there's a full spectrum, and in bodies, there's a full spectrum, but they don't always line up. And what does that mean for you? And as far as update on Channel Water, I'm always working on this channel, and I just moved to a new studio, so I'll be able to make more of these videos. But I've been working for the past year on one big project. It's both the audio and video book. We just finished all the illustrations, and it's a lot of work, and I really enjoy it. It's the project that's the closest to my heart, and I can't wait to share it with you. I just want to do it properly. So you will see more videos coming out soon. And please share in the comments questions you have or subjects you want me to talk about further. So thank you very much for watching today. We'll see you soon.